I second
there's an
the
amendment to the
amendment.
motion
Is what I second.
seconded by Commissioner Brennan. Discussion around the amendment.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes.
Again, part of the problem here is that we get these resolutions and then we're trying to fix them here on the dais. And I don't disagree with a single thing that anybody has said specifically about the minority reporter. But then I'm forced to think about what about city newspaper and
What about La Voz? What
that's
about
right,
El
exactly,
Mensajero?
exactly.
And if we're going
to have this discussion, it ought to be a comprehensive discussion. Again, if we're going to be the stewards that citizens expect us to be, we can't be making decisions. And I'm not saying it's anybody up here's fault. These are good ideas. As Commissioner Brennan has indicated,
I asked for the
these
information,
questions.
Commissioner White, and
You
it wasn't
absolutely
forthcoming prior to the meeting.
You absolutely did. And
So.
again, I'm not trying to suggest it's anybody's fault and that these aren't good ideas that are coming up here and now. But again, I think we might be doing ourselves and the constituents that we're trying to serve a disservice if we're making these fly-by-the-pants decisions without full and complete information. This is not what good government is about. Good government is about making sure other newspapers get the opportunities that the Democrat and Chronicle has, but good government is about studying those options, and I think Commissioner Campos makes some great recommendations. There's a lot of papers we're leaving out here in this discussion, so I would oppose that amendment, not because I oppose the idea of other newspapers being in on this, but I would oppose the idea because I think we need to spend some time, not a lot of time, thinking about this and making sure we get it right.
Commissioner White, I'm going to withdraw my second. You make good sense. I think you're right, and I was wrong. I withdraw my second to that motion.
Okay. Thank you. Let me also just ask the superintendent. He had his hand up. Allow him the opportunity to speak.
I also believe in the language. It covers a lot of the newspapers. In fact, we make great use of the Minority Reporter, city newspaper, and most recently the RBJ around the pencil program. So we make a great effort to go beyond just the DNC, to look to reach every part of the community. So I believe the language here allows us to cover just about any newspaper in the city. And right now we do work to try to reach them all. If you look at our advertisements, Minority Reporter, we've been using them quite a bit. RBJ, city newspaper, anyone else we can get our hands on to get our message across the city. So I believe the resolution covers everyone.
President Evans.
Yes, 1 second. Commissioner Elliott, this is the motion that you made. Commissioner Brennan withdrew his second, but go ahead.
Was this language, did we have this, the language, is this new language, the and or other newspapers deemed appropriate, or has that language been in previous resolutions, when we've done this in the past?
Actually, I can't remember.
It's a good question. No?
All right, so let me ask this question, because I still think in my mind we should list them. If we're going to list the Democrat and Chronicle, we should list the other ones as well. I guess my question is around what is advertised in these other papers, because for me the concern was to make sure that we increase the opportunity for persons of color to be able to participate in contract opportunities. Now, I don't know if I've ever seen, I could be mistaken, but I don't know if I've ever seen that kind of announcements being made in the Minority Reporter. And so that's what I want to make sure that we are covering. That if we go out to bid for, whatever, procurement supplies or whatever, contracts that we're going out, that there is a broader opportunity being provided by the announcements through these papers. The reason I brought up Minority Report is because I am African American. I can speak for that. I can't speak for the Hispanic community. So I would not dare to bring that up. But for me, it's important that persons of color, African Americans specifically, be a part of the process of when we are going to be entertaining contracts. So I just want to make sure that if the Democrat and Chronicle, whatever it goes into the Democrat and Chronicle, in terms of that, also is in the Minority Reporter, is what my concern is, because I want that population to be included in the opportunities for bids.
I mean, going back to your last statement, I don't know if we can say that whatever we put in the DNC will be in every other newspaper. newspaper may be too expensive to do that.
Well, and
because
so
we
that's
try,
my-
we try to target accordingly.
Right, and let
So-
me just, if I may, just interject here for a minute. When, in the Finance Committee, the question came up that it's only in the DNC that it can be reported in. And so that's why the discussion to make sure that we include specifically papers of color so that they could be included in these opportunities.
Well, I can say that we are targeting accordingly, making sure that we're looking for minority contractors, et cetera, especially with the law firms and other things that we do. We try to target papers that would serve that kind of community. In terms of actual data and where we put things, right now we're beginning to do that in keeping track of where we're actually placing ads and we're getting information from. Now, in terms of the language of the actual resolution, again, if I may, one thing you may want to consider is maybe just putting down resolve that any newspaper deemed appropriate and just dropping all of the names, which may not be singling out any one particular newspaper. This way covers everybody as well, too. That's something you may want to consider. But it is something, especially now with the hiring of an WBE officer, Shanae, we are beginning to make sure that we are even more targeted in what we do with advertisements and contracts, et cetera, making sure that we have the right kinds of outreach, in other words, for different communities. Some things the DNC, because of their circulation, we will go with the DNC. Some things we're looking for in terms of other kinds of issues like business, we go to the RBJ. So we're trying to be much more strategic in how we place ads to get the biggest bang for the dollar.
But I would venture to say that particularly in the inner city community, more persons of color read the Minority Reporter than they read the
Well,
DNC.
I agree.
Okay.
I completely agree.
All right.
So, so there was not a second. Commissioner Brennan withdrew his second to the motion, but we are having discussion around this.
Commissioner Evans?
Commissioner Brennan.
Commissioner Elliott has
Wait, before you start, Commissioner, I've just got word that the language, my suggestion about removing the DNC is not appropriate. We have to designate at least one newspaper. But the language, the way it reads, I think covers everybody anyway.
Okay.
we're not certain yet, though, whether or not we can designate more than one official paper. We're still
Yeah, we
waiting.
are. We did get that information. Yeah, we came this morning.
So it has to be either the DNC or some other single
Minimum of
newspaper?
one. Minimum of one, correct?
A minimum of one. Which means there can be more.
Yes, I did provide in an email
Okay.
Tuesday. I apologize if you did not receive that information. The question at the December 19th meeting was whether we could designate more than one, and we can designate one or more newspapers. So there's no maximum number, although at least one must be designated.
So we can designate more than one. We can do that.
Yes, Commissioner.
We can also, and it's not written anywhere, there's no legal requirement that the Democrat and Chronicle be that one. We could
Correct.
designate a handful of other papers, and I would just suggest for future reference that the board consider the changes that are occurring in the media world now. The fact is the Democrat and Chronicle circulation is way down. Their legitimacy as a Rochester institution, or their standing as a Rochester institution, has changed a long time ago. They moved their corporate headquarters out of here in 1982. There's a lot of dynamic, widely read activity at the grassroots with papers like City, Minority Reporter, the Smugtown Beacon. I don't think they take advertising. But, and perhaps we ought to, and I know we're not prepared to do this now, but in the future, consider doing that, especially if it is, and I don't know that it is, but if there are savings to be realized to reach the kind of diverse communities we're trying to reach, I don't think we should certainly be intimidated into thinking that the Democrat and Chronicle is entitled to an inflated subsidy of public money in perpetuity when we are going to be cutting teachers and programs and dealing with all kinds of painful financial realities that the Democrat and Chronicle opines about frequently on their editorial page. I would ask that we at least consider that in the future. I wanted to respond to something else that Commissioner Elliott has said, because she has said this from this dais numerous times, and I love Cynthia, and I know her heart's in the right place. But I'm disturbed when I hear members of this board say that African-American board members only speak for African-Americans or can only be concerned about their issues. Every one of us has been elected by the entire city of Rochester, black, white, brown, whatever. And we all have a moral obligation in faithfulness to the beloved, the notion of the beloved community that Dr. King gave his life for, to care about every child, every parent, every citizen, every part of this community, no matter what their color is. I reject the notion that I can't be concerned about African Americans or Latinos, that I can't be concerned myself with seeing that they have the opportunities that they haven't had in this district. And similarly, I think it would work both ways. I think certainly that would apply to white people as well. And we have to, I think, not let our hearts be hardened when we deal with these kinds of issues, and be inclusive and show our love and compassion and our inclusiveness for every member of this community and every child in this community.
Thank you.
May I respond?
Yes, you can respond in 1 second, but just let me say, we're now talking about back the original motion number 513. Mr. Superintendent, you had something, so then I can let
My
Commissioner
last
Elliott
comment,
respond.
one thing we can actually do, again, going back to accountability, we can produce a report to the board on a regular basis. You decide how often, where advertisement dollars are going, so you can begin to track and see where we're spending money.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Elliott.
Let me just respond to what Commissioner Brennan has said, so that he's clear in terms of my approach. And perhaps my approach comes out forceful, but let me say that what the history has shown me over the 35 years, 50 years that since the Civil Rights Movement, that when we look at the laws that have been placed on the books, by and large, the laws have supported, it has made opportunities for the persons of color. But it also has opened up the door. These laws have benefit mostly whites and mostly white females. Now, what happens is when the African American agenda is placed first, my experience has been that everybody benefits. When you look at the Civil Rights Movement and the fact that the leadership came from the black community, everybody benefits. But when you begin to talk about all, somehow African Americans get marginalized. And so for me, it's important as a strategy to put the African American agenda first, particularly because in this district, 60%, 65% are African Americans. Now, in terms of, and you are remiss if you think that I only speak for African Americans, but at the same time, I respect the Hispanic community too much to think that I understand the culture. Melissa is here for that. Now, if that's up to her whether she wants to promote it or not. If she wants to do all, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That's her. But what I'm saying to you is that it is important for me in my community that I speak up for African Americans, because one of the things I know that if I do, the entire community is going to benefit. When you look at the disproportionate social ills in this community, it's not white people that are getting killed on my streets. It is not white people who are dropping out of school primarily. It's African Americans. And so it's more of a strategy, an approach to make sure that we talk about the issue of race and keep that on the table, because it is disproportionately affecting African Americans. It is not to be hateful. It is what it is, and I know we have a problem with dealing with race, but we got to get comfortable with it and to be able to address it in a way in which we say, well, something must be going on here. Could it be culture? So that's the approach that I'm taking, not to be hard, not to be hateful, but to say we got to look at it in a different way. And so if you're thinking that I'm not, that I'm a racist, that's not the case. I'm trying to make sure that we spend a point of attention to the issues that are disproportionately affecting African Americans in this community.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan, last point
okay,
on this, and then I'll call the question.
Cynthia, we need to go have another cup of coffee and talk about this, because we could talk for hours. But, I've had a gun. I'm a white man. I've had a gun stuck in my face in my neighborhood walking to these meetings.
It's
sometimes.
Disproportionate. I'm just saying
I know.
disproportionate is the word.
It is. It is. But I would differ with you. I have a different reading of history. If you think that there was not white leadership in the Civil Rights Movement,
That's not what
when
I'm saying.
Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney
Hold on,
were
Commissioner
murdered in Mississippi.
Disproportionate is the word.
I let you.
Commissioner Brennan,
Commissioner,
and
let
I
you
don't want to
speak.
argue about it
I let
anymore.
you speak.
Commissioner Elliott, you got to let him finish. You have to let him finish.
I'm saying disproportionate.
Commissioner Evans, who has the floor?
Commissioner Elliott, you got to let him
President.
finish, please. Let him finish,
Right
please.
before?
Commissioner Brennan.
Thank you.
That's that's all I'm saying, disproportionate.
And I think we have to be careful not to make appeals. And I agree that it's disproportionate, Cynthia.
Okay.
But I think we're in more agreement than disagreement. But we need to be careful, all of us, when we discuss this issue. And we do. We do have hang-ups about this. We do have difficulty discussing this issue candidly. You know, Malcolm X said about a week before he was killed that you could never make any progress in racial issues when white and black people were afraid to discuss the issue candidly with each other. They're so afraid of offending the other that they don't discuss things openly.
Right.
And truer words were never spoken. And I don't think you have a hateful bone in your body, Cynthia. I think you mean extremely well. And I agree with you a lot. And in those areas that I don't agree with you, you may be right and I may be wrong. But I'm called, my own conscience tells me, given what I have heard from this dais in the 3 years that I've been here, to speak out about this. I think we need to adopt, we need more brotherhood, less polarization, less appeals to resentment and animosity, and more candid discussion of these issues.
In no intention do I mean to polarize or to be mean-spirited. That it is about the love that I have for this community and wanting all of us to participate in a quality of life in this community. But for me, it's about taking it from this position of where it impacts African Americans.
Thank you. Commissioner Campos.
I was just going to make a recommendation that we maintain this motion, but I think that the superintendent brought up a wonderful idea, which it's being able to have a report as to where the advertising dollars are going, because on top of Minority Reporter, there's a new newspaper, La Voz, or there's El Mensajero for the Latino community. And also, I think we do have to continually bring up these issues, and I just want to take the time to thank the administration, because we are working on the Latino graduation rate and working on ELLs, because it is a priority. They have the lowest graduation rate. So I think that if we do that and then also keep on top of the fact that we have that report, I think that that is suffice and makes complete sense. So I think we have what it is that we need.
Thank you. I concur with you, Commissioner Campos. Any other discussion around this before we call the question on 513?
What's the resolution, or what's the motion? I'm not sure which.
Commissioner Elliott made a motion to add the minority reporter. However, it died because Commissioner Brennan withdrew his motion, so we are back to the original motion, which is 513, which you have before you. Any other, Commissioner Williams?
I'd like to second the motion.
Are you still going to keep the motion on the
Yes.
floor, Commissioner? Okay, and the motion, you want to second Commissioner Elliott's motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we will, I'll go to a vote now unless there's any other discussion on Commissioner Elliott's motion adding just the minority reporter as, in addition to the Democrat and Chronicle, as the appropriate papers for the district.
Mr. President, very briefly, I'm not opposed to specifically identifying the Minority Reporter or the other papers that I'm not familiar with, which I should be and will be, even though I'm African American. But I again think that the approach ought to be studied. And this board does have a track record for saying to people, we're going to look at the issue and get back to you, and we've done that. So I do not support the amendment, only because I think we need to look at the issue. We can report back we can get the report from the superintendent, and if it sounds like the administration is not giving these publication opportunities to other newspapers, then we can specifically call it out here in a resolution and amend it. I just think that, again, the studied approach is the best approach.
Right. I mean, and I would just also add, I mean, I think about Time Magazine. I may want to add them. I may want to add the Criterion. I may want to add a couple of papers from Buffalo. I picked up La Voz as I was coming up here. I think the city newspaper is a great newspaper. So I would like to add a lot of different newspapers, but I think the and/or gives us the opportunity to add a menu of papers.
We don't have unlimited resources.
Right. We don't, but I just wanted to make that point. And I just also want to add a point of order that if folks could just address the chair before they begin to make remarks. Commissioner Elliott.
Yeah, just as one of the criticisms I have of this board, unfortunately, is that, or governance in general, is that when you talk about studying issues, it takes a long time. And so what I'd like to also, if this motion is going to die, that we talk about timelines, because, things get studied, and it is a way to just to get them off the agenda. And so I want to make sure that if we going to look at this, that we're going to make sure that we have a timeline of when we're going to bring this back for another vote.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Again, I can appreciate why Commissioner Elliott might be a bit concerned about getting back to this, but I can only point out by spotlighting her work and the board's follow-up to that work. We talked about...
We still don't have a consultant.
Commissioner Elliott, please. You talked about cafeteria aides not being under contract and them not receiving an appropriate raise increase. This board, all 7 of us said we were going to look at that issue. We looked at that issue, and we acted courageously and rightly, and we gave them an increase. We had to study the issue first. We had to look at the issue first, but we did the right thing in a timely manner. I have the confidence that this board of 7 people will do the right thing on this particular issue. Perhaps you don't share that confidence, but I believe we have a track record for doing the right thing in the timely manner.
Okay, I'm going to call the question on,
The chair cannot call.
well, we're not calling the question, but I'm going to ask for a motion to call the question.
I will call the question on your
Thank you.
behalf.
We're going
the amendment.
For the amendment, right. Those in favor of Commissioner Elliott's amendment of just adding the minority reporter, all those in favor, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Commissioner Campos? No. Commissioner Elliott?
Yes, because of time.
Commissioner Powell?
I think it's too narrow a scope. I vote no.
Commissioner White?
No.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
I vote no. I think that we can take this up and add tons of newspapers. Let's not preclude any of them. Now we're back to the original motion, Resolution 513, which has already been moved and seconded. I'm going to call the vote on Resolution 513, starting with Commissioner Brennan. Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Commissioner Campos?
Yes.
Commissioner Elliott?
No.
Commissioner Powell?
No.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner Evans, I vote yes. I believe that's in the affirmative, 4-3. We'll now move on to petty cash funds, resolution number 514. And after we conclude resolution 514, I'm going to turn the chair back over to the parliamentarian so she can conduct the election for vice president, and then we'll go back and move on with the rest of the agenda. Resolution number 514 is petty cash funds. May I have a motion to approve resolution 514?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner White. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Powell. Any discussion around resolution 514? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of resolution 514, 2008-2009 petty cash funds, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Madam Parliamentarian, if you want to commence with the roll call voting for the office of Vice President.
For the office of Vice President, candidate White, Commissioner White. Commissioner Brennan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Campbell?
No.
Commissioner Elliott?
No?
Commissioner Evans?
Yes.
Commissioner Powell?
First, let me say I'm shocked if there's any contest here, because I think Commissioner White has done an excellent job, has shown profound respect for all parties. I cannot understand the fact that there's any contention out on this whatsoever. I cast my vote in favor of Commissioner White.
Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
No.
Candidate Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Brennan, how do you vote?
No.
Commissioner Campbell?
Yes.
Commissioner Elliott?
Yes.
Commissioner Evans?
No.
Commissioner Powell?
No.
Commissioner White?
No.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes.
Commissioner White has 4 votes, and Commissioner Williams has 3. We will now have the oath of office for the office of Vice President.
White, please repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Vice President of the Board of Education
of the office of Vice President of the Board of Education
of the Rochester City School District,
of the Rochester City School District,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thanks, President.
And sign it.
No, he'll bring it to us.
Yeah,
We'll put it on stairs and sign it. Thank you. Commissioner White, I don't know if you had any brief comments.
Yes,
before
very
we-
brief, because my 8-year-old has been patiently waiting to go to Uncle Brian's house. Thank you, Ava. To all board members, I was scribbling a note to Commissioner Powell, and I said, I'm blessed and fortunate that you are here. And that's how I feel. Not because I was elected vice president, but because I am here to service the students, the parents, the teachers, and the people of the city that I was raised in. I feel fortunate, blessed, and I thank you once again for this honor and privilege. Thank you.
Thank you. 2009 committee assignments, I'm going to ask that colleagues please email me their choices of committee assignments by Monday. I'm going to call a special meeting for Tuesday to assign committee schedules, but also to talk about the overall schedule for the year. I know this past year it has been tough in terms of trying to coordinate people's schedules, so I'm really hoping that we can get a master schedule where committee chairs won't have to be scrambling around to try to get people to attend their meetings. So if I can get those by Monday at noon, the committee assignments, I can bring those for the special meeting. And then after that special meeting, I wanted to go into executive session to talk about the clerk follow-up conversation that we had here and also the board staff position that I am supposed to report back to you all on. Any other, item number 6, is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none. Item 7 is the announcement of the next business meeting, which the next official board business meeting will be January 22nd at 6:30. And obviously, we will be having a special meeting on Tuesday. The clerk will get that information out to you all. I would advise those in the audience and also of the public to visit the board's website, www.rcsdk12.org/BOE for additional meeting information. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner White, seconded by Commissioner Powell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We stand adjourned. Happy New Year. No, it's 12. That's all right.
Maybe it was because